Awesome Mindsetters, this is another great edition of your best show ever, which is Learn Extra on a Saturday. You might be chilling now thinking that it's boring, it's a Saturday, but guess what? Fun is about to begin because we're here for you. My name is Abram and I'm not alone. I'm with the awesome man, Mr. Aslam himself. So today we're having A Squared. How are you, Aslam?
Bram, I'm fine. The crazy man is in studio.
I can tell, but you sound so down today.
Down?
Did you eat your breakfast?
I had a wheat bix this morning and I'm ready to roll.
Nice one. What are you having for the Mindsetters?
Today we're doing paper 2 revision and up to where we are, and that's up to thermoregulation.
Right, nice one. Mindsetters, get ready because we are about to rock and roll now. But before we rock and roll, let's get to Facebook. Get your pen and your paper ready and your cell phone or your PC next to you because you should log into Facebook, facebook.com/Learn Extra. You must be knowing it by now. Like the page and comment on the page, ask your questions, and let's help one another. Secondly, you can also tweet us at Learn Extra. I'll read a couple of your tweets as the show goes by so that we can make sure that we also keep you entertained. Lastly, you can download your notes for free at learnextra.co.za/live. That's how we roll. Aslam, let's do this.
You ready?
I'm ready.
There we go. Guys, welcome Mindsetters. Remember to post your questions, post your comments, whatever is bugging you regarding paper 2 now. I'm going to take a short time of yours in between here just to give you some ideas on paper 1 stuff as well, because you've written it and I've been marking some stuff and some things are bothering me, so I need to share that ideas with you. So we will do that in between our work today. But today, right now, we are looking at paper 2. Remember, for life science, paper 2 deals with human responses, that is the nervous system, endocrine system, thermoregulation. Also plant responses, that means plant hormones and what they do. We also look at reproduction later. We haven't come to that stage yet. We haven't done that, so we will get there when we get there. And you have population study and social studies in terms of organisms and how they interact with each other under environment. So those are the items in paper 2. It's very frustrating when we go to areas, we talk to kids, and they ask you, sir, what's in paper 1 and what's in paper 2? You should know that from the beginning of the year. If you don't, get hold of exam guideline from your educators in the school. If they can't make a copy, take a copy, make your own copy, keep it with you, because that should guide you in terms of what you need to know for each paper. Let's move on with today's stuff. And the first question here, correct terminology. Last week I did with you your multiple matching, that is A only, B only, A and B, neither A nor B. Another important item in section A is correct terminology, and here people, we are looking for the terminology that is scientific, not the common names for items that we use. So please remember, build your vocabulary. Again, like I told you last time, build your vocabulary at the end of at the end of your book, the last page, wherever you want to do it. Use the glossary of the textbook to build, but use your own words where you can to explain terms. So let's move on. First one says, provide the correct word or term for each of the following. The plant hormone that promotes leaf and fruit fall, or leaf and fruit abscission. The person that said this obviously deliberately left out the word abscission because that would have given you part of the answer, and the answer is obviously abscisic acid. That is the plant hormone that causes the leaves and the fruit to fall when they are ready. The plant hormone that stimulates elongation of stem internodes, that would be gibberellins. Notice the spelling here is tricky. It's a double B and a double L, not a double R. Gibberellin. So you're looking at your pun on your B and your L there. The plant hormone that produces promotes apical dominance, that would obviously be auxin. The growth movement of part of a plant in response to a stimulus. Note this one very carefully. It's saying, let's underline that. The growth movement, first of all, of a part of a plant in response to a stimulus. Note they did not specify what stimulus. They said general stimulus. So in that case, your only answer there could be tropism. You cannot say geotropism and you cannot say phototropism, because gravity and light or hydrotropism or thigmotropism, none of that was mentioned in the question. So in this one, you must be specific and talk about tropism. When they replace the word stimulus, or they add to the word stimulus, light stimulus, then you talk of phototropism, or gravity stimulus, or in response to gravity, or in response to light, then you talk about those two words. Okay? Light coming from one direction. And again, this question is not just talking about light from one direction in a studio or anything like that. It's talking about the section that you are dealing with here, and this is plant hormones. So when a plant gets light from one direction only, we say that that is unilateral light. Unilateral. Uni meaning one, lateral one side. So a lateral side, sorry, unilateral light. So that's what we are talking about there. Guys, you'll notice that even in this question, apart from the fact that it's testing terminology, it's also testing the functions of the different hormones. You had to match a function with the hormone. So you can be questioned on the functions of hormones in different ways. Multiple choice question, multiple matching, and in the one-word answers. Not always going to come, give the functions of oxen, give the functions of gibberellin. That's not how it's tested all the time. Remember, it could be done this way, and it could be even put in such a way that it comes in an investigative question. So you need to learn your work and understand it, absorb that work. Let's move on. Now we're moving to the section B type of questions, and my favorite type, where they're asking you for an investigation or an experiment. They say the following diagram shows the tips of two plants stems at the beginning and at the end of an experiment. All right, so we read the instructions. Now we look at the diagram. We have plant A and we have plant B. Plant A, this was at the beginning, and this was at the end. Plant B, beginning, end. What's the difference? Again, look at the diagram, study the diagram, inspect, examine the diagram to see, to look for clues. Here, there was nothing. Here, they're telling you, we covered it with an aluminium cover. The tip was covered with an aluminium cover. There we go. And this was the beginning, and that was the end. And this one, look, in exam, they're not going to ask such simple questions, but this is put specifically to guide you through this investigation and to help you understand what's happening there. So let's look at that. They say, what happened to plant A at the end, obviously, of the experiment? Plant A, what happened? It was going straight, and all of a sudden it bent towards the light source, because the light was coming from the right-hand side, and this plant bent towards that. So that's what we're saying there. Plant A grew towards the light, or bent towards the light as it grew. What happened to plant B? Notice plant B, it's growing straight up. Plant B grew straight upwards. Which of the two plants was the experiment and which was the control? First of all, we have to understand what we're investigating. We could be investigating two things in this particular experiment. One is, we want to demonstrate phototropism. When a plant is given light from one direction, the stem tends to bend towards the light. Or we could also be experimenting or investigating or demonstrating that the auxins are found at the tip of the stem. And if we cover the tip of the stem, then the plant will continue to grow upwards. So those are the ideas around the experiment. So what will be the experiment and what is the control? In our context, an experiment is the one which tests for what we are testing, and the control would be that part on this whole thing where we remove the thing we're testing for. And let's go back to our diagram. Where did we leave things as they are? In A, obviously. And in B, that's what we are testing for. That means either phototropism or the fact that the auxins are found at the tip. So what have we done? We have covered that. We must leave everything else the same. All other factors must be constant, because if we do not do that, then we would not know which factor caused the difference. So all other factors must remain the same. So that's what you must remember in an experiment. Okay, let's go back with the answers. Which of the two plants was the experiment? Which was the control? Plant A was the experiment and plant B was the control. And I explained why just now. What conclusion can you draw from the results of this experiment? Now here again, we can look at two things. First of all, this one is just talking about plant stems or the shoots grow towards the light when exposed to light from one side. Or we could say that auxins control plant tropic movements towards light because we have negated that factor in the control. So it could be one of two conclusions. Again, it depends what you aimed to do. Your aim is, why do I do this experiment? Your conclusion, because of why I did this experiment, what did I observe? My results, observation result. What changed in this plant? As a result of what you are seeing in this observation, you can infer some information, you can make a conclusion. Because the plant bent towards the light, we say that the stem is positively phototropic. That's our conclusion. So remember, your conclusion must be in keeping with your aim. Good? What stimulus was experienced by plant A? That was easy, unilateral light from one side. What is the response of plant A to the stimulus? The response of plant A stimulus was to grow towards the light. We've done that before. What is the name given to this response? It's called positive phototropism. Remember, you can't just say phototropism on its own, because we can get negative phototropism as well. A plant part can grow away from the light. That will be negative phototropic. So you've got to be specific in your answer there. I'm hoping that clears up some of the ideas there. Remember, in this particular experiment, we can then go back to what we said here, and we can ask you to make a hypothesis. And the hypothesis could be the future tense of what the conclusion is at the end. You could say plants are positively phototropic, or the plant stem will grow towards the light. So we have an independent variable, we've got a dependent variable, and we have a relationship. It cannot be a question, it cannot be an aim, it cannot be a result, it cannot be to determine if, like an aim. It cannot be, will the plant grow towards the light? That's a question. It must be a statement, and you must take a stand. You could say that it will bend away from the light. It's still a hypothesis, because the hypothesis must be tested. So those are some of the things. And then again, we can ask for reliability, validity, etc. in this type of a question. Good. We move on. Again, an investigative type of question. A young bean seedling was placed on the ground as shown below. Here's the diagram. There's the root going horizontally and the shoot also growing horizontally. That is how we placed it. In which direction, will the root grow? The root would grow downwards. In which direction does the shoot grow? Obvious, the shoot will grow upwards. What stimulus or stimuli affected the growth of the root? Why did it grow downwards? Because of gravity. Notice that light doesn't cause the root to grow downwards. Gravity causes the root to grow downwards. Understand that. In this particular experiment, go back to the diagram. Anywhere on this diagram, do they talk of light? No, they do not talk about light. So even the stem's response in this particular experiment has absolutely nothing to do with light. Whatever we are investigating here is because of the position we put it and because of the stimulus. There's no other stimulus. There's no light mentioned here. But they don't have to tell you about gravity because they told you they put this plant in this way. Automatically, because of gravity, the auxins will be concentrated in this area here. The auxins settle at the bottom. And in the root, the auxins inhibit growth. And in the stem, they stimulate growth. So the auxin is going to cause cell division and cell elongation to increase here, and here is going to cause it to decrease. What happens? The cells here are more, the cells on the top are less. The cells on the top here are more, and here at the bottom is less. So because there's more cells there, it bends downwards. And because there's more at the bottom here, it bends upwards. Understand that. Right? One is to answer the question, but to understand what is required in this question. What stimulus or stimuli affected the growth of the shoot? Here it would be light and gravity, but we would go in this particular question more to gravity because they didn't mention light. What is the name of the substance that affects the growth of the root and the shoot? We've spoken about that before, and that would still be auxin. So whether they're talking about phototropism, whether they're talking about geotropism, the answer of the hormone, the name of the hormone would still be the same. The last question here, explain how this substance affects the growth of the root. I've explained it already, but let's do it in words. Okay. Gravity causes auxin to move down to the lower side of the root. The higher the auxin concentration on the lower side inhibits growth. We've done it on the diagram, and causes the cells to elongate less than the cells on the upper side. So the upper side growth is more, elongation is more, and the roots bend downwards towards the stimulus of gravity. The root is thus positively geotropic. Each line has a mark. So keep that in mind when you're answering this question. And when you're doing phototropism, it's slightly different because it stimulates growth on the dark side, and therefore the plant grows towards the light.
Thank you so much, Aslam. I need to tell you 3 things before we go to a net break, mindsetters. One is that you can go to Mixit and help us assess you in terms of understanding. Do you get what we're going through now? You can take that assessment. Your code for this lesson is LS12. So make sure that you jump over Mixit. Secondly, if you still want more intense revision, our winter school is coming from the 24th of June up until the 12th of July. So make sure that you go to learnextra.co.za/winter-school and find out more information about our classes. But lastly, after the Earth break, I'll be announcing the winner for our After Earth competition. Stay tuned. Welcome back, awesome mindsetters. Now, as promised to you, that I'll be giving you the winner from last week's show about on the After Earth competition, and our winner is Itumeleng, my boy. Itumeleng, my boy. Congratulations to you. You've won yourself a double ticket for you and your friend to watch this awesome movie that I had to watch yesterday because it was launching. So it's out there on our cinemas. It's just an awesome movie. It's off the hook. So you've won yourself a double ticket for you and your friend. Also, this awesome hamper. Beautiful pen and a t-shirt. Aslam was fighting over this t-shirt with me, but otherwise it's for you, mindsetter. So congratulations to you. Thank you. And Aslam, when are you planning to watch the movie? Because I had a great time yesterday.
You see, Abraham, you got the luxury of watching. So what was your favorite part?
My favorite part was when we had to experience the life after Earth. Just in the middle there, when they were transition, there was a transition between going to Earth. So that was my best part. I like how I love the animations, awesome, must say, but at the same time, it's very educational.
Ah, good, Abraham. We'll ask you some more questions as we go along.
Sure, please.
I'd like to know about this movie. I need to know so much more before I see it.
Well, you must see it. I can't give you more. You just have to see it. Then there won't be a reason for you to go see it. But otherwise, I'm asking the mindsetters on the page that if you've written already your first paper for life sciences, let us know what are some of your questions that were difficult, or if you haven't written it yet, what would you like us to help you with for paper 1? But now we're still on paper 2.
Thanks, Abraham. Let's move on. We're still busy with plant hormones, and this is a little bit of a higher level, 2 higher level questions where you need to think a little bit. One is you learn, level 1, learn the name of the hormone. Level 2, learn the function of the hormone. Level 3, learn the agricultural uses of it. Now we're going to a level 4 question. Let's see what it's saying. They're asking you to explain something. What are they asking you to explain? So the verb is explain. Explain why pruning a shrub causes it to become bushier or thicker. When we prune a shrub, That means we're cutting the tips off on the top. Why does it become bushier? And this you needed to know what auxin is, what is apical dominance before you could answer this question. So, and what is the answer? The answer is removing the tips of the branches removes the effect of apical dominance. Once the tip is there, apical dominance is in place because auxins are there and they ensure that the growing tip only grows upwards and you do not get lateral growth. So they inhibit the growth of the axillary buds. But once you cut the tip of the branches, it inhibits apical dominance, and so the lateral branches will start growing and the plant becomes bushier. And this is how people create a hedge outside their house, where they make a fence out of a plant actually, where they cut the tip. You'll notice they're cutting the tip all the time, so the plant starts growing sideways and they start growing into each other, and it forms a nice thick bush where it forms a fence in inverted commas around the house or in front of the house. The next one is a little bit more tricky. It says a flower explain why a flower opening its petals in the morning is not a phototropic response. Now here we have to understand that a tropic movement is a movement towards or away from something. And the opening of the petals is not moving towards light and it's not moving away from light. Although the light may have been a trigger, but it's not moving towards or away from it. So therefore it's just opening. And this is called a nastic movement. This is not a directional growth. It's not moving towards or away from something. Right? It is non-directional. So it's not a tropism, but we say it is a nastic. It's not in the syllabus, this, by the way. It's a nastic movement. We do not discuss nastic movements. I'm just telling you what it is so that you know. One day when you get there, you tell somebody, yeah, hey, that guy, that wise man on TV, he told me about this nastic movement already long time. Huh, Abraham? You think they'll remember?
I just had to laugh about that one.
They think they'll remember that one?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I'll also remember.
Good, good, good. Now we're going to that level 3 question again. Write explanatory notes on agricultural use of plant hormones. In other words, what do we use the plants hormones in agriculture? How do we use them? First one is auxins, and there's quite a few in auxins. We use it as a selective weed killer, a pesticide, a herbicide that kills dicot weeds. Not a pesticide, a herbicide. It improves the quality of fruit. It breaks down the dormancy in tubers so that the tubers can start growing. It prevents abscission of fruit. Notice one of our first questions was which plant hormone causes abscission? That was abscisic acid. Now auxins reverses that. If we don't want the fruit to fall, we can spray the fruit with auxins so they won't fall. Why would a farmer want to do this? You have an idea? Obviously, he doesn't want the fruit to fall to get damaged. He would prefer the workers or himself coming to pick the fruit from the tree and pack it nicely so that they do not get marked as damaged fruit, etc. So that's the reason why they would use that. So it's agricultural use. It stimulates the development of roots in cuttings. That means if you want to make stem cuttings, we cut the stem of a rose tree, for example, we leave it in auxins for a while, it will grow adventitious roots. We then take that stem cutting and plant it, and here we get a new rose tree coming from that adventitious, from that stem cutting. The next one is gibberellins. They sprayed onto grape plants to increase cell elongation onto the tree itself. So the nodes become, and the internodes become longer. And if the internodes become longer, there's more space for the grapes to grow, and they're not crowded. And if they're not crowded, it would be less chance for infection. It also increases the harvest. More plants grow in sugarcane because it makes them longer. It breaks down dormancy of seeds. Abscisic acid, seeds may be sprayed in winter. Abscisic, remember, causes dormancy of seeds. That means that the seeds are not active and they will not germinate. And if we spray them in winter, they won't germinate. And if they do not germinate in winter, this is a good thing, because if they do germinate, the plant can die because it's too cold, there's not enough water, etc. So instead of them doing that, we spray the seeds in winter for that purpose. Cytokinins slow down aging process in some plants. They spray the plants before they shipped so that the plant doesn't become too old too quick. Oh, some of us need that, Abraham. Some cytokinins. My beard would have stayed black.
I need that too.
Horticulturists will use cytokinins to keep freshly cut flowers for longer. They spray it on top of the flower or on the flowers, on the flowers so that they remain fresh for longer. Ethylene, we spoke about some time ago. They inject it into chambers. The plants, like bananas, are put into chambers, and they inject ethylene in there to ripen the bananas quickly. By the way, interesting fact that we spoke about before, ripens bananas, melons, and tomatoes, by the way, or tomatoes. In terms of bananas, if you want your avocados, this is the time to have lots of avocados. I am an avo fanatic. I am a freak for avos.
That's just like me and you.
Are you having it as a dessert, or you eating it just like it is?
With everything. I can make it a sandwich, I make it a salad.
Good.
I have so many ways of
Very healthy stuff. I prefer it as a dessert. I make the dessert myself. That's the one thing I can do in the kitchen.
Oh, nice.
And my family waits for that. So if you have this, avos, generally when you buy them, they're green. Well, they're always green anyway in color, but green in the terms that they're not ripe. If you want to ripen them quickly, Abraham, put them next to the bananas.
Okay.
Why? Because the banana gives off naturally ethylene, and it stimulates the fruit to become ripe.
Are all these injections dangerous for people?
These injections? No, not at all.
Not at all.
Well, again, you could debate with me on that one, because they are not natural, and there's long-term effects we don't know and what have you. But remember, this is not physically injecting it. There's a chamber, there's a bananas, it comes like a spray, like the aircon is keeping us cool at the moment. That type of a spray.
All right.
Okay.
There's a more natural way that we used to use for avocados.
Yes, tell me.
Putting them in a mealie.
Putting them in a?
In a mealie.
Well, that would be probably the similar reason of that as well. Also putting newspaper, keeping it in a warm place. Huh? All right, good. So we're learning as we're going along. Guys, that brings us to the end of the plant hormones. We now move to animal responses, and straight from the plants to the brain.
I just have to, just before you take that one, here's a comment that says, highlight Aslam and tell him he's planting a seed in my studies and it's a positive phototropism.
As long as that seed is going up to the brain and the brain is getting larger. Okay, let's move on. Good. I see. Tell them, well, they're going to listen anyway. I don't have to tell Abraham to tell you. I can tell you myself. He doesn't have to interpret for me. Okay, guys, you see, you're making fun of something that you're going to remember. But please, don't write it like that in an exam. There's no marks for that. So use something as an association tool to remember something. But remember why you put that in the first place. Good. Now let's look at the brain. It says study the diagram below and answer the questions that follow. We're not going to spend too much of time on this. We're going to go through quickly. It's a simple section. First question says identify the parts labeled A, B, and D. And as our custom is, we will label on the diagram so it's easy. A would be the cerebrum, the largest part of the brain, the cerebrum or cerebrum. B, at the back, the small part there, the cerebellum. These are the two parts that usually confuse you, so be careful with those two. And lastly, D. In this particular diagram, D would have to be the medulla oblongata. But when we're marking, we may debate this because of the close proximity to the lower end. Somebody may call that a spinal cord as well. So you must be careful in that sense. This one here would be the pons. Part of the pons, medulla are very close to each other, and the spinal cord. So they are continuation of each other, so you need to be careful with that one there. Let's see what we have labeled it. Have we got it right? Yes, we've got it right. It says state two functions of A and D. We know what they are now. We don't have to go back to the diagram. A is the cerebrum, and their functions are easy. Controls voluntary actions, perceives sensations, feeling, touching, touching, pressure, sight, hearing, taste, smell, all these sensations. Higher thought processes like memory, remembering things, judgment, rational thinking, etc. Controls involuntary, D was the medulla oblongata, controls involuntary muscle movements. It has the reflex centers for breathing and the rate of the heartbeat. And crossing over of nerves takes place in the medulla oblongata, so that the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body and vice versa. Predict what would happen if part B were to be damaged in a motor car accident. Part B again, the cerebellum. And if you remember the functions, notice when they ask you this predict question here and a part, it's generally testing you the function, the reverse of the function. This is what it was doing, and if it is damaged, then those things won't happen. For example, there won't be coordination of what. Remember here, now here you've got to be careful. We're not saying voluntary action will not take place, because that's the function of the cerebrum. But we are saying that there won't be coordination of the voluntary action. That's important there. Also, you may have problems with posture and balance, because the cerebellum's function is coordination of voluntary movements, posture, muscle tone, and balance. Explain how the brain and spinal cord are protected. I've put here just 3 things, and we're going to explain it. You do not write it letters, because the verb was explain. You're going to explain. Bone, the brain is protected by the skull and the cranium. The spinal cord is protected by vertebral column. That's the 2 bones that we are talking about. In terms of membranes, both are protected by the meninges. You don't have to name them, but you say meninges is good enough. And both are protected by cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. And the membranes, the meninges. And here, the brain, skull, and cranium. And also the spinal cord by the vertebral column. Are we good with that? So that's what we are talking about when we saying explain. You needed to go into more detail with the explanation, and I think we've done a little bit of thinking. So Abraham, take it from there.
All right. Before we take that break, Mindsetters, let me tell you that we are having a Career Expo, Career Indaba Expo, that's going to be happening at Sandton Convention Center. So make sure that you register for free. The details are on our Facebook page. If you'd like to get more information in terms of being guided on how to choose the right career, or if you've made a decision already, you'd like to further more your information and your insight in that career field, make sure that you visit the Career Indaba. We are going to be there also from the 20th of June up until the 22nd of June. See you after the break. Welcome back, matriculants. Now, I need to tell you something that is happening on June 16th. 2 things are happening. One, it is Father's Day, and secondly, it is Youth Day. Now, to help you spread out the message and the love to your dad, we're giving you an opportunity to send us a message over Facebook event or over our website. I'll be sending the link also through our Facebook page, whereby you can tell us what is your wish to your dad, and that message could be displayed on our channel during the on June 16th. So make sure that you keep those messages coming. Let the show continue, because we are having a great time. It is Triple A. I've just been corrected on Facebook. So it is Aslam, Abraham, and Arthur tuning in.
There you go. Good, guys. Let's move on. Welcome back. I'm hoping you had a nice break. It's an old question, but still learners get it wrong. In the diagram below, the letters A, B, C represent, and D, by the way, represent regions of the human nervous system that can be blocked by chemicals for medical reasons. Study the diagram and answer the questions that follow. Here's the diagram. So they're giving you a key. If it's A, the block is at A. If it's B, the block is at B. C, the block is at C. And D, there is no block. Now, notice this is A, the block is here. That's coming from the brain to the spinal cord. B, there's a toe somewhere there. The sensory neuron is blocked. C is there, but the motor neuron. Okay, D, there's no block. So write the letter A, B, C, or D for each of the following statements using the key above. When the skin of the toe is stimulated, when the skin of the toe is stimulated, the toe moves and the patient knows it is moving. So one is, he knows that it's moving and the toe moves. So obviously in that case, there would be no block. So your answer would be D. The second one, the patient can feel the toe being touched or pinched, but cannot move the toe. What are they testing here, by the way? They want to know whether you understand the functions of sensory neuron, motor neuron, etc. So you need to know what is happening here. So here what we're saying again, the patient can feel the toe being touched or pinched, but he cannot move or she cannot move the toe. So that would talk to motor neuron. So we've got to look for the motor neuron in the diagram. And there's the motor neuron, so the block will be at C. The block is here, that means they can feel it. There's a toe, they can feel it, it's going to the brain, but they can't do anything about it. So the answer would be C there. All right. When the skin of the toe is stimulated, the toe and foot move involuntarily, but the patient cannot move the toe voluntarily or feel it moving. When the skin of the toe is stimulated, the toe and foot move involuntarily. But the patient cannot move the toe on his own voluntarily or feel it moving. He doesn't even know that it's moving. So it's doing its own thing. Now that will come back to the block being here at A in that case, because you don't know about it, so it's not going to the brain. All the neurons are working, but it's not going to the brain. The patient can move the toe, but cannot feel the stimulus. So he can move the toe, his motor neuron is controlling it, but he cannot feel it. The sensory neuron is not feeling it, so the block will be at B. Just a creative way of testing whether you understand the functions of the sensory neuron, the motor neuron, the function of a brain, and also of a reflex action. The one where they're talking about involuntarily it's moving, a reflex. So it's not going to the brain at all. Good, let's move on. Study the diagram below showing a reflex arc. Talking about a reflex arc, now we go to a question that deals with a reflex arc. Identify the neuron labeled at A. Look at that neuron. It's in the gray matter of the spinal cord. It's connecting the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. So therefore, it would obviously be a connector neuron or a relay neuron or an interneuron. All these words are acceptable. They are all acceptable terms for a connector neuron. Name the type of neuron that is connected to structure B. Structure B here, you can see it's a diagram of a muscle. And what is connected to the muscle? The muscle is an effector, so therefore what type of neuron would be connected to an effector? It would be a motor an effector neuron there, or a motor neuron as such, right? A motor neuron. Motor neuron. Also an efferent neuron. Efferent, E with an E there. All right. Explain the effect on the body if the neuron mentioned in B above is damaged. In other words, if the motor neuron is damaged, what's going to happen? First of all, we discussed that just now with the other diagram. The person will become aware of the stimulus, but the motor neuron will not be able to transmit that information. So he will be able to, he's aware of the sensation, but he cannot respond to the stimulus. And there, no movement, no reaction, no response. Explain the significance of reflex actions in human. Why do we have this reflex action in our body? First and foremost, you must always remember that a reflex action, all the reflex actions that we talk about, are there to protect you. So that's the first thing. So helps to protect the body by reacting, responding quickly, without thinking about it. Imagine you had to step on a thorn, and now you're sitting, Abram, and you're thinking, I think I'm getting poked now. What shall I do? What could have happened in that time?
Jump.
It would have been gone right through you.
Yes.
Or if you had your hand on a hot plate, okay, now I think I'm having, I think it's a bit hot here. What shall I do? You know, you can't do that. Immediately you put your hand away, or you jump away from that pricky feeling of the thorn. So it protects the body by moving that part quickly. The interneuron makes a shortcut, not going to the brain. So you're not thinking about it. You don't have to interpret it. It's just an action that's going to happen. And the reflex pathway that is immediately available to do that. Instinct, in other words. Good. Now we go to the, we're connecting the nervous system with another system. And the question that comes with an essay. And the reason I put this particular essay up, very simple, it connects two of the chapters in one question. March 2012, NSC paper 2, last year March paper. Let's look at this question. It says describe. Again, the verb is describe. In an essay, telling you to describe it means you've got to go into detail. The role of the hypothalamus and the adrenal glands in bringing about changes to the blood vessels of the human skin, and explain why these changes take place. So three important things. One is explain the role of the hypothalamus and the blood vessels. Two is describe the role of the adrenal glands with the blood vessels of the skin. So those are the two things. The third thing, or there's two things in that third thing also. Explain why each of these changes take place. So there's four things. One is, what does the hypothalamus do with the skin blood vessels? Two is, what does the adrenal gland do with the blood vessels? Second, why these changes take place in the hypothalamus reason and the adrenal gland reason. So you needed to explain that in that order. Remember, keep your answer, answering the question. Don't give too much other information that is not necessary. And let's look at what we had to give here. First of all, we start with the one that was given first, and that's the hypothalamus was given first. So we describe that whole story. What happens? Change in hypothalamus is dealing with temperature control, thermoregulation. That's why I said two chapters. Thermoregulation, and adrenaline is dealing with endocrine system. So two different stories happening here. First of all, the change in the temperature is detected by the thermoreceptors in the skin, and they convert the stimulus to an impulse. The impulse is transmitted to the hypothalamus. That's the first part. So we have these heat receptors and cold receptors in our skin. They pick up the stimulus, convert it to an impulse. Sensory neuron goes to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is now sensitized. It's hot or cold or whatever. The hypothalamus then sends impulses to the muscle layer in the arterioles of the skin. In the artery is made up of smooth muscle. It's sending message to that one day. What happens? On a cold day, the arterioles close to the surface constrict, or you can say vasoconstriction takes place instead of saying arterioles close to the skin constrict. Constrict, which spoke about on Wednesday, becomes narrower. Less blood flows to the skin. Remember, you must use the word less. You can't just say, no blood. If that happens, you'll die. Less blood. Sweat production decreases. Less sweat is lost. Less heat is radiated from the body, so less heat is lost. So the whole idea is to restrict heat loss. That's the one. On a hot day, it's the opposite. The arterioles close to the surface dilate, or vasodilation takes place, and it'll be the opposite to that. More blood flows and sweat production increases. More heat is lost, and more heat is radiated from the body, and more heat is lost. So that we have dealt with the one chapter, that is thermoregulation. Now they also said, describe how adrenaline controls us. The adrenal gland secretes adrenaline, firstly, and this hormone prepares the body to cope with an emergency or danger, stress situation. Adrenaline causes the blood vessel of the skin to constrict. Oopsie. Let's go back. Right, okay, there we go. Adrenaline causes the blood vessel of the skin to constrict. Why? Because the skin in an emergency is not considered to be a vital organ. You don't need to deal with blood to the skin at that time. Nor is the digestive system a vital organ. The brain is a vital organ, the muscles are a vital organ, the heart is a vital organ in a term of an emergency. So you need to know that. So less blood flows to the surface of the skin because the skin is not an important, right? I told you that. Redirecting more blood, more oxygen to the vital organs. This is the whole idea when adrenaline kicks in. We need more blood to go to the vital organs so that more food, more oxygen goes to the vital organs so we can use these vital organs to deal with the emergency. You don't need to digest food, Abraham, in a time when the lion is chasing you.
No.
There'll be the other part happening, but we're not going to talk about that on national TV. Huh? Okay, all right. We're not going to talk about that here, right?
Ouch, Aslam.
Why? To respond to the emergency. This is what happens. So what have we done now? We've described the first two parts. How the hypothalamus is dealing with the blood vessels of the skin and how adrenaline is dealing with the blood vessels of the skin. Now we have to move forward. And we haven't done that here. We needed to still talk about, well, we have done it in the answer. We have described why as well. We have done it in one. We've described what happens and why it happens. We said why because they're not vital organs, and the other one is to deal with different temperature to lose more heat and to gain more heat. So we have included that in our answer. You could have even answered it after that, but that's fine. You could have done it there, right? Now, a question.
Before you move to
yes,
that one,
sir.
I have a question.
No, why not?
Wise man Songwana says, I'm confused on how the impulse get to the brain when there's a stimulus. Can you explain to me the process?
Wiseman.
Yes.
Wiseman wants to know how the stimulus gets to the brain. Okay. First of all, remember, in our body, all over the skin especially, and inside our body, we have things called receptors. What is the job of the receptor? Is to pick up a stimulus. What is a stimulus, you ask then? A stimulus is any change in the environment, whether it's external or internal. If there's any change, the receptors pick it up. What do? They convert the stimulus to an impulse. So let's give it some meat in terms of words on the board. It'll make more sense to you then, Wiseman. So what we are saying here, we have a stimulus. The stimulus is picked up by receptors. The receptors convert that to an impulse because that is their job. The impulse goes to a sensory neuron or neurons. These sensory neurons take this message to the brain. Remember, this is now, Wiseman's question is not about a reflex action. He's talking about how the stimulus gets to the brain. Okay, so that is why we're talking. In a reflex action, we're not going to use brain there. It goes to the spinal cord. Remember that. This is now in general. When it gets to the brain will interpret it. It'll go to the part where it's going to be interpreted. And from there, the brain will issue a message to bring about a response. That is how we do that. Okay, Wiseman, I hope that helps you. This question is a question with difference, and I added it deliberately because you tend to make mistakes when it comes to this. You don't understand what happens here. The question says, you may wonder what the hell is he doing, but you'll understand as we go along. Calculate the surface area and volume of a cube with the following dimensions. 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter. What is the surface area? That means length, breadth, and height, 1, 1, 1. What is the surface area to volume ratio, SA to volume of this cube? Very simple. Remember, the surface area is 6 centimeters squared because it's 1 centimeter squared per side. 1 times 1 is 1. Length times breadth will give you the area. But there are 6 sides to a cube, so it's 6 centimeters squared. That is the surface area. The volume will be 1 centimeter cube. 1 times 1 times 1. Length times breadth times height. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. There's no, what you call it here, 6 times. So it's 6:1. Now, we take another cube and we make that 2 centimeter, a bigger cube in other words. What happens there? I'm not going to go to the calculation because that's easy now, but notice what happens to the ratio. It drops from 6:1 to 3:1. So the larger the organism is, or the larger the surface area, Abraham, the smaller the surface area to volume ratio. So a smaller organism will lose heat quicker because it has a larger surface area to volume ratio. That is why when our babies have a fever, we have to worry more because they lose or gain heat faster than we would do. So you must understand that when you are dealing with this type of a question. Good? No other questions there by you, Abram?
I have one.
Yeah, let's hear
maybe
that.
we can take a break after this one. It's from Kabelo, DJKP Mpahlele. He's asking, is it okay to put the essay in point form?
The essay can be put, yes. What's his name? Kabelo.
Kabelo.
Kabelo, that's a good question. You can put it in point form. I've discussed this before. But your point must not be so brief that it can't stand on its own. The point must make sense on its own. You'll notice in the essay itself, that was the memo. The way we put it there is the memo. That is how we mark. So it is in point form. But each point stands on its own.
All right, can we take a break?
Sure.
Right, Mindsetters, as we take that break, make sure that you get to mix it and just assess yourself on our Curio. Make sure that you understand the questions that we're having. Our code for today is LS12. See you after the break. Welcome back, Mindsetters. Now, taking a look at our page, we're doing pretty much well. Aslam, I must say, a lot of our Mindsetters are learning a lot, and also to some, it is a revision. I also would like to encourage you guys that whenever you see paper 2, just know that there's a lot of reading, but it also needs a lot of understanding. It's unlike paper 1, as also some of the Mindsetters are saying on the page, but we're here to help you. We've got your back.
There you go. Just watch your back, Abram. Okay, so we take a even larger cube, then we're going to continue with this one here. 3 by 3 by 3. And you'll notice that you're going to get the answer at 54 centimeters squared, 27. 54 is to 26, or 2 is to 1. So the question that they ask, and I've explained already, is what happens to the surface area to volume ratio as the size of the cube increases? The surface area to volume ratio decreases as the cube becomes larger. So the larger, and this can be then ported to organisms, the larger the organism, the smaller its surface area to volume ratio. It makes sense because the larger organism will have a larger volume, and the surface area is not getting proportionally bigger with that as well. So because of that, remember, first of all, you work out surface area, and in a cube, it's simple, length times breadth. You're getting your surface area of one side times 6 gives you 6 sides. Then you take your volume, which is length times breadth times height. You do not have to multiply that by 6 because there's no 6 spaces. The volume is what's inside. Then you take your surface area, divide it by the volume, and you get your surface area to volume ratio. You take it to its simplest form. And as we saw in this progression, we started with 6:1, we then went to 3:1, came right down to 2:1. So the larger the organism, the smaller its surface area to volume ratio. So smaller organisms like mice and rodents and squirrels, Abram, they have to worry about heat. They gain heat faster and they lose heat faster than bigger organisms. So therefore, they need to have special mechanisms to cool them down or to gain heat as quickly as possible. Huh? Good? Remember, that's an application question now. The next question says, the following table shows the average daily energy intake of soldiers living in countries with different average temperatures. So, in other words, what are they taking in? Input to get work done, the energy that they're taking to get work done. And they say average temperature of the country, 35, going down to 15, 5, -5, -20, -30. And by now, when you're in grade 12, you would know that -30 is a lower temperature than 5, or -5 for that matter. It's more negative. Okay? And what's happening with the intake in terms of energy here? 13, 15, 16, 18, 20, 21. So I'm not going to give away too much. Let's answer the questions. Describe the relationship between the average temperature of the country and the average daily intake. Simple, simple, simple. And again, why do we put questions like this? For you to understand that some answers, you need to just take information that's given to you on the paper and interpret it. You need to interpret tables, diagrams, and graphs, and even articles sometimes. You need to interpret it. And the answer is in the particular data that's provided. And here you see, as the average temperature of the country decreases, the average daily energy intake is given here. You didn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. You didn't have to memorize any information to figure that out. It's given to you here, and you just had to give that relationship. The other word that they like to do, describe the trend in this table. Your answer would be the same. When you're talking about the trend, you would start with as this happens, then that happens. You are relating this part of the table to that part of the table. So you must understand that. Good. Provide an explanation for this relationship. Now you needed to know, you needed to use your knowledge to answer the next question. It said, explain why this relation takes place. And there you go. As the average temperature gets colder or decreases, the soldiers have to generate more heat to balance the greater amount of heat lost to the environment. Remember that humans and other mammals are endothermic organisms. Endothermic organisms, as we discussed on Wednesday, are animals that generate their heat from inside their body. They're not dependent on the environment for temperature change. We need to maintain a constant internal environment. For this, you need energy. So what's happening, as the temperature is decreasing, the temperature outside is getting lower. But we need to maintain the temperature at 36.5 to 37 degrees, Abraham. And therefore, we would have to produce or use more energy. Rather, not produce, we can't. We have to use more energy to maintain this temperature. They do this by increasing their metabolic rate. So, respiration increases. And what is respiration again from grade 11? It's burning of food, oxidation of food. And if that happens, the rate of separation goes up, and that needs, if you're going to burn food, that means you're going to need more food, you're going to need more energy. The soldiers will have to increase the intake of food, which will provide them with the additional glucose that they need. Now, interesting question that I heard on radio some years ago. You know, Abraham, your mother tells you if you got a cold and now you're running around barefoot.
Yes.
She tells you, don't go, you're going to get more sick.
Yes, yes.
But what do we know about a cold? It's caused by a virus, yes?
Yes.
So what the hell has got a barefoot got to do with a cold?
I never thought of that. It's
yes.
actually logical now.
Right. But our grandparents, it has come from our great-grandparents and they've been telling us. But listen to the logic of the old folk.
All right.
You are walking around barefoot. The environment is cold. You are exposing your foot to the environment.
Yes.
The floor is cold, your foot is hot. So you're going to lose heat from your foot.
Okay.
To the environment.
So there's some kind of transformation.
Well, loss of heat.
Okay.
Yeah, right? Now you lose this heat, but you need to keep your body temperature at 36. So to get it to 36, what do you have to do? You've got to use energy. So instead of fighting the cold, you're using energy to make heat. So you have less energy available to fight the cold. And therefore, that can contribute to you getting attacked and succumbing to the virus.
To the virus, yes.
So can you see the old folk? They were not stupid, they were wise.
They were wise in their own way.
They didn't need the PC.
They were wise in their own way.
And they did not need a BlackBerry.
Or
they
a
just
smart board.
They only had the red berry from the tree.
Or the smart board.
Or the smart board, yes. They didn't need all that. Good. So think about that the next time you have a cold, are you ill, don't walk around barefoot, or rather keep, or even your body, keep warm. Because if you keep warm, your body does not need to use energy to keep you warm. And in that way, your energy can be diverted to fight any foreign intruders in your body. What do you think the soldiers living in the hottest country would do to prevent themselves from overheating or developing hyperthermia? Hyperthermia, too high the temperature. The soldiers could keep cool, obviously, firstly by behavioral, by wearing less clothing. Yeah, not naked now, eh? Abraham, I can see. You know, your mind, I'm worried about you, Abraham. Like,
you said by behavior.
Behavior, meaning that you are choosing to wear fewer clothing. Not physiological. Physiologically means your body does it on its own, right? Okay, I'm worried about you, Abraham. I've got to have a talk to you after the show. Doing less vigorous activity. Spending more time. You see, Abraham, I'm worried about, I'm really worried. But now you got to chat with him. Spending more time in the shade, cooling off by taking by swimming or taking more regular showers, doing their exercises at night so that you're not increasing the body temperature too much. Drinking, and most important, guys, drinking lots of water. Remember, when you drink a lot of water, then you can sweat, and the sweating will cool the body. But if you do not drink water and you're sweating, eventually there'll be no water in your body and there'll be no sweating, so your body will reach that hypothermia that they're talking about there. Well, if you're out there and you can use a fan or an aircon in a tent or whatever, today, times are advanced, you can do these type of things. But mainly, use the natural surroundings to use shade, etc. Stay away from the heat. That will help you as well. Good. What do you think the soldiers living in the country could do to prevent themselves from developing hypothermia, the other end now? In this case, the soldiers must wear thick, well-insulated clothing. They've got to keep themselves warm. Do more exercises, because exercise is going to increase the metabolic rate. Metabolic rate will burn food, and therefore body heat increases. Use heaters or fires. Well, in the bush, you'll be using fires more than heaters, obviously. Eat warm or hot food and drinks so that your temperature can be taken up in this case. So can you see, without asking you the definition of hypothermia and hyperthermia, they've put you into a scenario and you needed to figure out how to answer it. But the basic thing is, what have we learned when we did this section? We learned what is hyperthermia, temperature goes too high. Hypothermia, the temperature goes too low, below 35 for long periods of time. And we also learned what should we do to treat people that are found with hyperthermia or hypothermia, or to prevent it. And this is what this question was testing. Abraham,
I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
One is from Arthur.
One at a time.
Yeah. One is from Arthur saying, can you lose more heat throughout your thumb or your ear? Explain this, because it came in my assignment.
Can you lose more heat from the thumb?
Yes.
Or the ear?
Yes.
Right. Arthur, you should be telling us that from what I told you earlier with that calculation. That's what was that calculation telling you. There's the thumb. Now, obviously, you first have to measure your thumb and your ear. Some people have small ears. Not unlike me. I've got a big ear. In my case, I would lose more heat from my ear than from my thumb. Why? Because the thumb has a smaller surface area compared to my ear. You've got to have to actually do a physical measurement, and you have to do the calculation.
I think mine are the same.
Yes, but surface area, you'll have to do the calculation. Also, depending on the amount of blood that moves to those areas. But because the ear has such a thinner area, surface area, not a thinner area as well, you would lose more heat. By the way, Arthur, to give you an idea, you take elephants, Abraham. Elephants, when they're hot, what do? They flap their ears.
Yes.
Because they have capillaries that go to the ear. And the ears of the elephant are large. They're huge. Right? So more heat goes to the ear. And while they're flapping, they obviously then getting a cooling effect. And while heat is being lost there, the heat is being given off the environment and helps to cool
more like
the
a
body.
natural fan.
Natural fan, you can call it, but because of the surface area of that. So that is what you need to look. That is what that question. Look at the question properly. I'll have to see it in context to understand the question. But more or less, you've got to relate it to surface area to volume ratio.
All right. One last more.
Yeah.
Because I said I have two. Tulu fellow says, Abraham, can you please ask Aslam, how is the auditory canal suited for its function?
Auditory canal, we're going to do the ear. We'll hold that question till we get there.
Okay.
All right. Remember that we're going to come back to it.
All right.
All right. Let's carry on. We're still busy with temperature control. It's a lovely question. It has come in previous papers, and the USN papers use them in their learner resource as well. The graph below shows the effect of strenuous exercise followed by a cold shower on the body temperature. Again, I told you to give you information. There's the information that they're giving you. Here's the 0, and time is given in minutes. The body temperature of the person is given that way. Strenuous exercise from that point to that point. What happened to the temperature in that time? You can see what's happening there. And thereafter that, and then when the person has a cold shower, look at what happens to the temperature in that time. And they're giving you diagram 1, diagram 2. Which part of the brain responds to the temperature changes? You didn't have to look at the diagram for that. They're just asking you a recall question. Which part of the brain deals with that? And it's obviously the hypothalamus, because the hypothalamus has the temperature regulating center. What is the maximum temperature reached? And again, you have to read. You didn't have to study anything. There's the day you can see clearly, 37.5 degrees Celsius. For what period of time did a person engage in strenuous activity? And this one caught the children, because what they did is they went from 0 and they went there, they say 15. But you can see that he didn't start at 0. He started here, and that would be plus minus 5. And he ended at 15 minutes, so that would have been 10 minutes only. Okay? Why should body temperature not be allowed to fluctuate? And that we dealt last week, because enzymes are sensitive to temperature. Which diagram 1 or 2 would represent the condition of the skin after 15 minutes? It would be diagram 1. After 15 minutes, his temperature was high. So when the temperature is high, it's hot. The temperature, the skin blood vessels dilate, so more blood goes to the skin, more heat goes to the skin, more heat is lost by conduction, convection, and radiation. Abram.
Right, as we're about to take that break, don't fear making mistakes. Rather fear not making not making enough of them, because we learn through our mistakes. If you've made any mistakes on the questions that we're going through, don't feel bad, don't judge yourself. You can still correct it. See you after the break. Welcome back, matriculants. Now let's just take one question that we have from you, as Aslam is about to continue. I thought there was an alarm ringing, so Aslam he's about to continue. This one is from Admire.
Admire.
Yes.
Wow.
He says how to calculate. My question is how to calculate the surface area to volume and how to describe the relationship between volume and temperature.
Okay, good. Remember, Admire. We dealt with that just now, how to calculate it. When you want to calculate surface area to volume, you first calculate the surface area, then you calculate the volume, and you divide the surface area by the volume, and you get a ratio. And that's how we that is how we calculate it. That's the first part of his question. The second part of your question is faulty. You're saying, how do we describe the relationship between volume and temperature? You probably wanted to say surface area to volume ratio to temperature. And that's what we said earlier. The larger the surface area to volume ratio, the more heat the organism loses to the environment. So the smaller the organism, first of all, you go this way. The smaller the organism, the larger its surface area to volume ratio. That's the first thing. Then we say that the smaller organism loses and gains heat faster than a larger organism. Why? Because a larger organism has a smaller surface area to volume ratio. And why do we say that? We have proven it with these calculations. You take any of these three calculations and you'll see, as we're moving from the first one down, the surface area to volume ratio decreases when we make the cube bigger. And we transfer that to organisms, and that's what we are talking about there. Good. I'm hoping that answers your question. Remember, we have dealt with it. So now we're moving on with this question we were busy with. Right. Explain your answer there, why. And I have done that just before we went to the break, but let's go back again. That we choose diagram 1 because when temperature increases, the blood capillaries to the skin dilate, or vasodilation takes place. And go back to the diagram. You'll see these ones are dilated and these are constricted. Now, it was very easy now to take the same question and reverse it and say what's going to happen if temperature decreases. Then you're going to choose diagram 2 and you'll say vasoconstriction. So more blood goes to the surface and more heat can be lost because it's hotter in that time. He was training, he was exercising, and therefore more heat can be lost in that way. Okay. This one here is just a straightforward revision of what we've been doing in terms of temperature control. In one nutshell, it's saying draw a flow, and this is more for you. They can ask in an exam to draw a flow diagram, but they prefer explanations and descriptions and discussions, but they can ask you to draw a flow diagram. But this one here I put just so that you can use a flow diagram to understand this negative feedback mechanism, that temperature control in itself is negative feedback. Let's see why. So there's our story there. This is normal body temperature, 37 degrees. Remember the seesaw we spoke about when we spoke about negative feedback mechanism? So that's your line, straight line. Normal body temperature is between 36 and 37 degrees. If there's an increase in body temperature for some reason, that's the stimulus. What is the stimulus? An increase in body temperature. It must be picked up by a control center, and the control center is the hypothalamus. What does the hypothalamus do in change? It sends motor nerve impulse to the skin. What happens? Vasodilation takes place. The blood vessels become wider or dilated, and you have more sweating. So all this, both of these, will decrease the body temperature back to normal. Let's go back. What is the stimulus? Increase. What is the response? A decrease. Negative feedback mechanism. When a stimulus causes a reverse response, this is called a negative feedback mechanism. And vice versa, if there's a decrease in body temperature, the control center is still the same, it's the hypothalamus. It doesn't change. And if that happens, it sends still motor impulses to the skin, but the motor impulses it sends are different. It causes vasoconstriction and decreased sweating. And as we discussed last week, it can also cause shivering. Shivering creates friction. Friction creates heat, and respiration increases. That causes body heat, and a result is the body temperature goes up. Stimulus going down, a response taking the temperature up again. So this is a diagram just for you to understand what happens on a hot day and a cold day. Moving on, looking at the eye now. They say label parts 2, 3, 4, and 5 respectively. 2 would be the cornea. 3, the lens. 4, the suspensory ligaments. And 5 would be the ciliary muscle and body. Let's go down. Up. And there we have the answer there. Good. Name and describe the process that causes part 1 to dilate. Part 1 is the space they're showing you between that muscle and that muscle, this area here. That is the torrid. So part 1, first of all, we have to know what it is. It is the pupil. They want to know, name the mechanism that causes it, or process that causes it to dilate. It's called the pupillary mechanism or pupil reflex. The radial muscles of the iris contracts, the circular muscles relax, the pupil dilates, more light enters the eye. This last part is logic. To get it to dilate, when the pupil dilates, it means it's wider and more light will enter the eye. There you have that. Why does that happen? Is when does this happen, by the way? When the conditions are dim. In dim light, the pupil will dilate to allow more light to pass through. State how the following defects can be treated to improve vision. What can we do for long-sightedness? What do? We wear spectacles with convex lenses, or we use convex lenses. Convex contact lenses, sorry. Contact lenses. These words should be switched. Laser during surgery to reshape the cornea. We can laser the cornea. There are debates around that, whether its long-term effects are good or not. But the safer options are obviously wearing the glasses or the contact lenses. Astigmatism, because it is uneven curvature, we wear spectacles with lenses which are unevenly ground to compensate for the uneven cornea, or we can do surgery. Oops, sorry, again, doing the old nonsense. All right, so we there by astigmatism, we spoke about it, and then we move for a cataract. It's easy. Cataracts must be surgically removed, and a lens must be replaced. So quick surgery. Short-sightedness will be the opposite of long-sightedness. We must wear spectacles with concave lenses, or use concave contact lenses, using laser during surgery to reshape the cornea. Next question, also on the pupillary mechanism. Which set of readings, A or B, represent the change in the pupil size of person 1? Here's person 1. Person 1 is moving into the cave. Person 2 is moving out of the cave. So you would understand that it's darker inside and lighter outside. So if you look at the diameter of the pupil, 7654, 5678, the answer would obviously be B. B. Why? Because initially the pupil diameter is small for person 1, yes, and on entering the area of low intensity, his or her pupil will increase to allow more light to enter to form a clear image. So we're taking the readings and we're answering the questions. Okay, we have a question on the ear we're going to take as well, Abram.
All right.
But before we do that, let's look at this one. Study the diagram that below and answer the questions. They give you the diagram of the ear, and this is part of the inner ear, and let's answer the questions. Label parts A, B, and C. Again, we'll do it on the diagram, easy for us. A, semicircular canal. B would be the utriculus, or rather this would be the ampulla, sorry, at the base there. And C would be the vestibule, one of the sacculus or utriculus. Let's go to our answers. Right, so we can either, you see, that's where the problem comes. This one here, I would have to correct myself there. This is not the ampulla, I was right the first time. Let's take all that out. The first one would be the utriculus. Below, look, there's the ampules here. There. So this would be the utriculus. And this one will be the sacculus. Good? There we go. Name the fluid that fills the inner ear. It would be either perilymph or endolymph. Depending on the membranous labyrinth is endolymph and the bony labyrinth is perilymph. Explain two ways in which this part of the ear is protected. The perilymph prevents friction and absorbs shock. The bone protects it and it's deep in the skull. State the function of part labeled D. It converts the stimulus to an impulse. That would be the auditory nerve leaving there, or the vestibular nerve that's leaving there. Name two other receptors which are involved in balance that are not part of the structures represented in this diagram. They would be photoreceptors in the eye and proprioceptors in the muscles that help us with balance, because we see with our eyes, and with that we can balance. When we close our eyes, I told you start feeling wobbly, and also the proprioceptors throughout your body, it gives you that sense of balance, tells you about your muscles. That question on the ear.
Yeah,
they wanted to know?
That question is covered now.
It's covered?
Yeah, someone answered the question.
They answered it there?
Yes. Good,
so that's what we want, right?
Yes.
We want us to be a community learning. The question, by the way, just for the benefit of everybody, was on the suitability of the auditory canal.
Yes.
For that. You just go onto the page and you'll see that answer there. Good. I love that when that happens.
I think we can just take on the Curio review.
Okay, let's look at the
Let's look at the results, because the mindsetters are anxious to find out.
They want to know what's happening.
Yes.
There. Okay, let's look at this one here. The learners are asking which part is responsible for balance. And you got to look, 16.6% of the people have answered the question. And let's just do a quick review on that, if it does that for us. And we don't have much time, but let's just do that quickly. The one that we are a bit worried about is this one here. This one here is the correct sequence in which the impulse goes on from the receptor to that. Remember, it starts there, C, and from C it goes to B, from B going right through E, then D, then A. Many learners have gone the other way around. Others have started in the middle of the diagram. So you must always go with, firstly, where did it start? There's a stimulus is there, and you're moving in that direction from there. So please, 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 when it comes to reflex action, a diagram like this is beautiful way to learn a reflex action. Just by knowing this diagram here, you can actually learn the section. So with that, Abram, I hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Aslam. As you can see, Mindsetters, we're already picking up. So it is the end of our session and also the end of our competition, After Earth competition. Thank you to everybody that entered, and thank you to you for watching the show. Keep on being a mindsetter and also on our page. Last words from me is that keep on believing in yourself, because when you stop believing in yourself, no one will ever believe in you. Have a great Saturday.